right, awesome.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sandy Glaze. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I've been feeling very inspired lately by a lot of things that I'm seeing happening around the area with what's going on with people speaking up about rules being forced down their throat. And I'm noticing people are starting to find their courage and speak up more about what's wrong in the world. And I think if we're going to make these changes, this is how we go about it. We start watching the people who are standing up and learn from them. So if you haven't already done so, by all means, subscribe to my channel, hit the notification button for all notifications. And whenever we come up with other information, you'll be first to know. And I'd like to introduce a very special guest today. I'm going to call him Mr. Mark Tracey. And I first came across Mark on YouTube about a year or so ago. And I was watching just random feeds would come across and he would make statements. And I understood that he was growing very much in alignment with integrity and doing the right thing. There was a certain calling in his mannerisms and the things he was saying. And it was to the point that I was hoping to interview him for Father's Day last year, and things got away from us. And I'm just mentioning that to him now. But Mark has a really interesting story to tell us about standing up and finding courage. So with that, I'd like to introduce Mark Tracey. And Mark, would you take a minute and just let everybody know who you are? And I want to lead into what your recent situation is and how you came about it.
Sure, Sandy. Thanks for everything. So, again, my name is Mark Tracey, and I guess I'm an old wrestler and wrestling coach is kind of my long time history. I went to college for wrestling of all things and had some really good success, but then got into computer support once I couldn't make any money at wrestling. So that's kind of my background, but I'm really into health. Like, health is a really big deal to me, and keeping my body in shape and staying strong. That's always been huge to me, keeping my athleticism going. And then on top of that, trying to make a living on top of that has been a real challenge sometimes. I worked at Nike for 17 years. So I was kind of a long time Nike employee. I got pretty deep in the company there. I could spend a lot of time telling you some Nike stories. But eventually back in 2012, I left the company and then kind of tried to get back into wrestling. And I had an MMA gym for a while, Sharks MMA in Hillsboro, Oregon. And then as the gym was maybe kind of struggling a little bit, that's another whole story. I ended up getting a job at Salesforce just down the street to kind of help supplement my income.
Can you tell us Salesforce?
So yeah, Salesforce is a software company. It's a big software company. They have, I'm trying to think how many employees they have, but it's got to be 100,000 or so, and that's just the employees, not counting the contractors. And it's a global company. It's a big, huge company. And Mark Benioff is the CEO. And if you know who Mark Benioff is, he's in the World Economic Forum. So I was literally working for Mark Benioff in my last position there at Salesforce. And I was there for five years. I started as a contractor back in 2016. And then they brought me on as a full-time employee in 2019. And then I kind of watched, and Salesforce was a great company, honestly. I was like shocked. I was like, I came from Nike, which was a toxic culture. Honestly, I got some really crazy Nike stories, but I went to Salesforce and I was like, wow, this is nothing like Nike. It's actually pretty cool. People were super nice. I really liked the company. They were doing great things in communities around the world. I was impressed. And then COVID hit. And then we started getting into contact tracing. Within a week of COVID, within a week of the lockdown, we had a contact tracing software out within a week. And I'm like, that's a little suspicious there. But that's its own story. And then I started just questioning what the company was doing with this contact tracing. And then we had these lockdowns in Oregon. So I'm living in Portland, Oregon, and one of the worst places for the lockdowns. And it was crazy. I was like, the whole mask thing, I can't wear a mask. I even tried to wear a mask and I just can't do it. It's like, it literally traumatizes me, and people don't get it. They don't get it. So I'm like, I can't wear a mask. And then suddenly I can't go grocery shopping. I got assaulted grocery shopping a couple times. It was crazy. Wow. And then my son was taken away from me. So I'm not allowed to see my son by his mother and himself. He decided to remove me. I took him shopping one day at REI, and turned into a big scene, and he called his mom, and I've only seen him a couple times since, and I'm not allowed to hang out with him. He doesn't want to hang out with me because he wears a mask, and he thinks, he's vaccinated, and that was just heartbreaking to me.
Yes.
So I lost my son. I'm working at Salesforce, so I'm not happy with the contact tracing. Then they're getting into vaccine tracing, and then they start coming down with these vaccine mandates for their employees, and we can't come in the office. And then to top it all off, Sandy, what happened to me was I was being literally abused and harassed at work because I was vocal about not wearing the mask. My boss had it out for me. He was trying to he was harassing me. He was giving me way too much work. It was forced overtime just to keep to stay on top of my workload that he was giving me. And then he was harassing me, like criticizing my work, like ridiculing it. And I take my work.
That's called constructive.
Go ahead. But I take my work very personal. I don't
Yes.
my work ethic is one of my, that's why they hired me, because I'm a strong worker. I set the pace.
So you thought. Maybe
right.
You're too strong, right? So they call that, I think, constructive dismissal in HR terms. They want to get rid of someone. They don't want to pay any form of severance out. So they make your life hell until you quit.
That's what they did. That's basically what they did.
It's a technique.
Sorry for
that others know.
Yeah, and I have basically, I currently have a case with the EEOC open. I'm meeting with them next week to discuss that.
Can you explain who that organization is for some people who aren't from the
United States? The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, I think it is. So it's a federal organization that, I'm a big Peggy Hall fan with the Healthy American, and she talks a lot about just opening a case. If you feel you're being harassed or you're being discriminated against, which I felt like I was, you need to open a case with the EEOC. So I did, and it was kind of funny because my last week of employment, Salesforce was paying me to work on my EEOC case, but I wasn't showing up to work because I was telling them it's a hostile workplace. It literally was. It was a hostile work environment, and they were trying to throw me back in their frying pan after the holidays. And I'm like, I'm not coming back in, people. It's hostile. It's hostile. You can't. And they said
openly hostile.
Yeah, and I had reported it for, part of it was I had reported it to my manager's manager. He kind of blew it off. So then I reported it to his manager. And then 3 days later, I got written up for performance issues,
Totally. That's how they play the game. It's all control at all costs. Right.
And it was just, they made my life hell, and it was affecting my personal life. And it was affecting my health. And I'm like, I got to get out of this company. It's just dry. And then I can't ethically work for this company because they vaccine trace and they discriminate. And they're pushing this agenda it's crazy. It's crazy what they're doing.
Who did you say the CEO works for again? He's part of what organization?
The World Economic Forum.
Do you want to share just a little bit about the World Economic Forum? I know who they are.
I don't know a lot about, I'm just starting to learn about them. So I think Klaus Schwab is the leader, I think.
I think they have the Global Leaders Program that they put whoever they want in different positions through their programming.
And Mark Benioff's a big part of that. And I had no idea who this organization was when I first started with Salesforce. And I didn't even learn about any of this stuff till after COVID. And I'm like, oh, what the World Economic Forum? What's that? And anyway, so it was a big eye opener for me. And just to see what the company's doing from the inside was really interesting. And the way they were treating their employees, who are standing up and not following these mandates, these brutal mandates that they put down in Oregon.
And I like how you said within a week they had contract tracing, because for the people who think back to 9/11 and what happened in New York, it was interesting because all of a sudden airport security was an issue. Within a week, every airport, I don't know if it's global, but every airport in North America, as in Canada and the US, had those scanners that you could stand in, and they were so-called X-ray machines. Within a week, they were already created. They were already manufactured. They were already shipped out to where they be. And there's only, when waking up, part of the waking up process is using discernment. There's only maybe one, maybe two possible explanations. And the most likely one was they knew it was coming. They were in on it. So I'm saying that for your company as well, right? Oh, you're freezing up there, Mark. So Mark, you were talking about the harassment. That's what, I went on about the airports, but you were talking about the harassments you were experiencing in the workplace. Can you tell me what transpired after the harassment? You realized you were being a targeted individual?
Well, I kind of figured out how to protect myself, and I just honestly, I continued with the harassment for a long time because I felt like I had no choice. I needed the money, and I was really desperate for money, and I was trying to find another job, but it was difficult. And they were putting so much stress on me at work, I didn't have time to find another job, really, with all my other stuff going on. But I tried. I had a few interviews here and there. I just didn't get another job. So I felt like I needed to find another job before I quit my job. But then my mom died back in November.
How did she pass? From what?
She passed from OC. What is it? Her lungs were really bad. She was on oxygen 24/7. OCPD, I think they call it. Yeah. So she had lung issues, not from COVID. She didn't get jabbed either. I think she died of natural causes, which has been going on for years. And she was actually in hospice. She went into hospice back in August. So I came out here in August, and my son got to come out, which was nice because I hadn't even seen my son for over a year. And at least we got to see my mom before she passed. But so she passed in November, and then she left me her house, and she left me a little bit of money. So honestly, I didn't really need the money anymore. Well, I mean, I still kind of need a job, but not like I did. I'm not like desperate for money. And I was really tight on money back then with everything going on and my child support and all that. Trying to get moved, long story, but paying off debt from my gym. It's crazy. It's how expensive it is just to survive. And anyway, so after the holidays, after my mom died, I took a month of bereavement, and then I came back to work for the month of December. I actually worked in the month of December, and he's still harassing me all December. I'm like, this sucks. This is crap. And the last 2 weeks of December, I just took off vacation because I was tired of it. And I'm like, and then I was even going to come back in January and just, kind of try to work through it and just start, building this harassment case because I was tired of it. And I'm going to stand up at my company. I'm like, I'm not taking it. I'm going to stand up and not take this anymore. And I don't need the money anymore, so it's time to stand up. And then I wrote, it's a long story. I wrote a LinkedIn post comparing the vaccines, how we're wearing the gold star in Nazi Germany. And I did this on LinkedIn. And I got reported to Salesforce for making this LinkedIn post. And then it came up, I got contacted.
Do you know who reported you?
I forget his name. It was one of our customers. It wasn't even an internal employee. It was some customer of ours. And we had this big, I responded where he reported me. I responded to him. I tried to engage him and I'm very peaceful. And I'm very empathetic with these people. I don't try to I'm very empathetic. My son is one of them. So it's like, come on, it's like I have to be. And anyways, I forgot where I was going with all that, but I just couldn't come back to work. And, I was realizing, they started bringing up this performance issue thing again, how my performance isn't cutting it. And I'm like, BS, I'm one of their best techs. I work my butt off. I know when I do good work, and I do great work there at Salesforce. I'm one of their best techs. And
it's great when you know that about yourself and you have the confidence in your own work that you're good at what you're good at. And
I know when I'm good and I know when I'm not good. And I was actually one of their quality experts. So it's bizarre that they were writing me up on these performances. It just didn't make sense. It was not cool. And but then, so I made a post, I think it was like 2 weeks ago, in Slack, which is our company communication channel. Salesforce purchased Slack, so we all transitioned over to Slack, and we're all communicating in Slack now. And we have this all hands channel, and that's where we ask questions of the executive team. And we have these all hands calls where Mark Benioff is in these meetings, and we're in these meetings with our executive team. And so we get to ask questions of them. So I decided to put a pretty tough question out there. And I'd been calling them out on their profits anyways, because I had an issue back in February of 2021. Mark Benioff was spouting off why should we waste a good crisis?
he was actually saying this in public. Why should we waste?
That sounds like a psychopath, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I'm like, wait a minute, what? And so I said something on my Facebook page, and then I got written up for my Facebook page as part of my, so not only did they write me up for my performance evaluation, they wrote me up for my Facebook page because I called out Mark Benioff, all on the same. And I'm like, this is not right, people. And I'm calling him out on his ethics, because it's not ethical to profit off a pandemic. I'm sorry, it's just not. And I'm like, it's weird that no one's saying anything in the company. And then they wrote me up for it. Like, it's like I'm being threatened to get fired if I do it again. And I'm like, no, this is an issue. We need to discuss this, So I was calling out Mark Benioff on that. And the other thing I called him out on was the vaccines, because I think these vaccines are not safe and they're hurting people. And he's telling us, the executives are telling us all in the company that we have to get vaccinated, or we better get vaccinated, or, he's not telling us they're going to fire us. They haven't gone like some companies, but they're pushing it hard. And those of us that aren't getting vaccinated are getting excluded. We can't participate. We can't go in the office. We get harassed by our managers for stuff we don't even do.
It's interesting to look at this, though, and understand that so much for employment standards, so much for ethical standards.
There's no ethics
for workforce labor standards, any of these human rights, human resources, all the rules are being broken.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that tell us? So I'm a firm believer that a lot of this was happening before this flu hit, but what's happening now is coming out of the woodwork, that we're seeing that there's many companies who use these tactics to get what they want. So basically, their bullies are going to browbeat you to do what you want. And if you don't go along with the psychosis of why waste a good crisis, you're going to be a problem, and they're going to take you down. And this is how they brought in, I think, the politicians. They introduce a moral issue. Watch who stands up. Those people are kicked out. Somebody replaces them. Off they go again. And this is the whole flip, I think, that needs to start happening, that we start realizing this is Western society. This is the corporate world. This is how big money works. And when we understand that, we can decide that there's nothing special going on here. There's no rules for anybody. Look at the medical community. How can we have so many people trained, regardless if you're a specialist, a doctor, or a nurse, but you have such different opinions about what should happen? Then what did that degree get you? It's when all they want you to do is go by your own personal judgment, use your own discernment. But if that person is not capable of critical thinking, or even common sense, or common decency, or understanding boundaries, it's not like, what's the point? So this is great that you're sharing this today. I see so many parallels.
And, there's a lot of people at Salesforce that are just like me, that are not speaking up. And it's hard, because they were like me, where they needed the money. So I understand.
But if you're money, you're going to sell your soul for money, you're a prostitute. And I'm not saying this to you because you and I talked about, when you first told me what you had said, I said, you forgive yourself. You do not give yourself a hard time, but you start to realize that there's more important things in life than money. And this is part of the change, is that Babylonian fiat money system.
Well, I'll tell you, part of the problem though, Sandy, is, before I was at Salesforce, my first 2 years at Salesforce, I was homeless. I lived out of my car, and because it's a long story, but I just didn't have the money I was making wasn't enough to do everything. So I could either get an apartment or have a car, and I needed a car more than an apartment. And I'll tell you what, being homeless is humiliating.
Yes.
It's brutal.
So they can do contact tracing. They can do contact tracing and make sure everybody's got a certain medical procedure, but they don't have the money to go and solve the homeless crisis, or the hunger crisis in the world, or the pedophile registry. They can't have a registry for pedophiles, but they can whether you got a certain medical procedure. So this also leads to intentionality. So it's not okay that you were experiencing homelessness, and there's a lot of people who are experiencing it. I hear Los Angeles, there's blocks and blocks of people. They won't have Johnny on the spots there. Like they want them living in filth. And at some point we have to start asking the intentions and the integrity. I don't care if you're a worker, a supervisor, a department head, or you're in charge of a whole department. We have to start asking the integrity of some of these so-called structures that are in place for the good of humanity, because it's not.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, on a positive note, I think what I did at Salesforce was open up for other people to have these conversations.
Totally.
it blew up. Honestly, it felt like a civil war the day that I made my Slack post.
It was.
And,
Can I make a comment about Slack? I bet you they
Sure.
put parameters on Slack that they get like a 24-hour window that they get to review comments now before they
Oh no,
post.
yeah, and they're now hiring Slack moderators after what happened. So it's like I created quite the firestorm.
You made my day. You made my day when you sent me your what you wrote in your letter. Are you comfortable sharing that? I would love you to read it because it was
great.
so
And
well
it was
done.
interesting because it was a couple days after Martin Luther King Day. So, you know, I borrowed some words from Martin Luther King, which some people took issue with, but here we go. And here's what I wrote. In the spirit of Dr. Martin Luther King, there comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe nor politic nor popular, but he must take it because conscience tells him it is right. The vaccine mandates are not right. The exclusionary practices this company engages in is not only discriminatory, it's downright criminal. In addition, at this point, it's safe to say that COVID vaccines are making people sick, certainly not stopped infection, and evidence shows it's a crime of epic proportions to ask or coerce your workforce to become vaccinated. Some of us are even harassed in our workplace. In our very homes, we're treated differently than the rest of you who comply with these illegal mandates. And I personally hold the executive team responsible for this despicable and illegal behavior. One last thing, I would love to see a response publicly from Mark Benioff himself, who gloats, why should we waste a good crisis? Well, let me tell you, Mark, it's because it's unethical. And it's sad to me that I have to be the one to point it out to you. Peace.
Very nice. And very short.
You know, I think people really took it the wrong way. From what I heard, they thought it was very aggressive. And
hang on, hey, Mark, that's just
Yeah.
that's just part of the psychopathy that they have to say, oh, you're the aggressor. So they always have to invert it. So the victim is the aggressor, the victim is the abuser. But then, and then sometimes the abuser then flips and plays the victim. Oh, you hurt Mark. No, Mark can say what he wants. Why can't you? So there's a there's a psychopathy that is inherent in our societies. When they say you think they took it the wrong way. No, they got it the right way. They're just ass kisses hoping to let Mark know that they're ready to go to the next bar of whatever he needs. It's not personal. That's my take. I've seen a lot. I work with a lot of disordered personalities for whatever reason. And sometimes intentionality, they lie. So what's the battle of good and evil? Good is that you do no harm. You live a good life. You're decent. You're kind. You try to help others. Evil is you try to dupe somebody. You try to deceive. You try to take what's not yours. So it's not just like a physical element of a torture. It's the absolute deceptiveness, the sneakiness, the manipulation. That's the evil. If he came out and told the world that he was going to do this a year ago and he was going to have all the contract tracing and that they are going to come out with a vaccine, would they have the balls to tell everybody they're doing it? No, they are the deceivers. So we got to stop assuming they don't get it. I don't mean, you do what you want to do, right? But I don't assume anymore that they don't get it. I'm pretty sure they do get it. They're hoping they can play on your compassion and make you feel guilty that you take it back.
Right. Well, in a way, I did feel a little guilty with some of my friends because I'm in this group of 200 other Salesforce employees, and some of them got mad at me for making,
Of course, because now they want to prostitute themselves out for their paycheck. So now you're a threat for their comfort. Always what happens, I just want to share one more thing. There was a reverend here who is speaking a lot at the Freedom Rallies in Toronto, and he's from a town called Elmer. I think it's called the House of God, is his pulpit. They're part of the Mennonite faction. So he's speaking up in Toronto. Next thing you know, all the local radio stations in that area for probably a 200-300 mile radius, we're all told that everybody in the hospital was the Mennonites because they wouldn't get vaccinated. So the media turned on what he was a part of, which was the Mennonite community. So he turned the public against everybody in that community to put pressure on him to get him to stop. The world is psychopathic. And it's not like this lack of empathy, lack of sympathy, lack of compassion, but they go out of their way to twist this up because money's the whore of the day. In this Babylonian system, I do think that still is the root cause, that everybody's chasing that mighty buck, but at what cost to somebody else?
Right.
So other people in your department, this is a shout out. If anybody sees this, We see your game too. You put pressure on Mark. Mark's allowed to say what he wants to say. He's allowed to say what he thinks. If your bank account is more important or your family is more important than the family you're screwing over with the contract tracing, you're no better than this Mark, whatever his name is. You are just an extension of that. And it takes so much courage to stand up. I do get that. So I want to just put that out there, that when you start being the observer and just sit back and look at a situation, you see it from a different perspective. You see intention. You see those little games, that you see the little people that come up and give you a hard time. I would be saying, thank you for showing me your true colors. Then you know you don't waste any more time on them. But that's not your personality. And you're going to get seasons probably really fast and really hard, even though you've been seasoned in different ways. You're going to get seasoned with this, but hopefully there's people that can support you and be around you. You know, if you ever have any questions or you need to talk, I'm more than willing to sit down and go, no, Mark, don't own their shit. Here's
Awesome.
what I see.
Thank you, Sandy. I appreciate it. Yeah, I really appreciate
you're
it.
Welcome. But this is fantastic that you spoke up. So can you tell me what feeling you had inside your body when you knew that you just had enough?
Oh, it's just a huge relief knowing because I've known for a while, I got to get away from these people. I've known it, you know, it's a narcissistic relationship, you know, they're abusing me and I got to get away. I was just I've been trying to find my exit strategy for over a year. And finally I have it. And I'm like, okay, I can get out of here. Thank God.
And you did it with aligned with your integrity. And this is so important when we understand the role of integrity in society. As I've said, I've noticed it in your posts before. There's things you would say and I'd be like, oh, Mark, like it would just be, you're over the target. And you don't take any, like you're not aggressive at all, but you just make your statement and you don't take any prisoners. You just put it out there. And this is what we need to see more of.
Yeah, I just like to speak the truth. Exactly. Yeah. Speak the truth. And what's with all these BS lies? It's like, you know, the older I get, the less BS I can tolerate.
Yeah.
And
I think
I
that's
just can't. I'm to the point where I'm done. I don't want to tolerate it anymore. I'm done with it. And
so when you say the older you get, but let's just put that out there. So when we go through stages in life, you know, when you're born and up to about when you hit puberty, you go through your ego development because you have to understand how to fit into the physical world with other people, within environments, job structures, as you start to go through these things. And then you go through your teenage years, like your immune system changes, you start waking up, you start looking for relationships, then you go into the physical and you want to have a home and get the physical security around you, and you start going through these things. And as you start climbing through life, I think the ages they give is 22, 33, 44. And I think they say 55 if you have not had your spiritual awakening. So usually they say 33, you're starting to wake up, something's not right. 44, you're looking around and you're going, no, I do not accept this. If you haven't figured out, usually by 55, just from my research, you're not gonna all of a sudden have an epiphany. It doesn't mean you won't. But so when you say the older you get, but that's what the spiritual awakening is, seeing the truth. The truth is the light.
It is, yeah. And I'm finally seeing it. It took me, you know, I'm 58. It took me, like you said, about 55 years to get there. It really did.
But it doesn't matter.
You're there. The truth.
It doesn't matter. You're there.
Cool.
Right?
It's not always easy to stay here. I know that.
It's not easy because everything is designed to go after money. You have to be a whore to the system. Look what's happening in the hospitals. You're getting paid to test somebody for a flu. You're getting paid for a positive test. You're getting paid for a prescription you put them on that starts with the letter R. You're getting paid to put them on a ventilator. You get paid for the diagnosis. You get paid if the death certificate says. There's a lot of money in all this, right? Like when you look at what they're paid, where's the integrity? Where's the morality? There's one man in Texas, I think his name is Rick Green. He was a vet, and they basically wouldn't let him leave the hospital, wouldn't let his wife come in. They had another doctor who says, I'll take him and I'll give him different medications. The hospital said no, because they wanted that 100,000 on the certificate that says he's dead. There was another one Stu Peters did, like I'm watching this on Stu Peters. Anyone not watching Stu Peters? Start watching his show because he will tell you what's going on with the medical tyranny, and he gives many different doctors examples and families examples. There's one in Mercy Hospital, same thing. They told the wife, too bad, we're not doing what you want. So where's the absolute narcissism? This is sociopathy and psychopathy, all this for money.
I don't know, or something. I don't know, Sandy, but it's just crazy what they're doing. It's crazy. I don't get it. I never thought we'd be here in our lifetime, but here we are.
Yes, and it's good that it's interesting because we've always been here. What's happening is we're seeing it now. So back in 2012, I'm not going to go into too much of this, but 2012, I started noticing things were wrong, started finding various think tanks in Canada, started writing email campaigns going, what are you doing? If you can't figure this out, find somebody who can. Like, this is insane. You can't figure this out. And I started watching them lock down their websites. You had to have a password to get in. I'm like, you're a public website. So they want to know who you are so they can trace you through your IPS address. So I realized then, it wasn't until I hit the third email and I'm like, you people can't be this friggin' stupid. And as soon as I hit send, you know, when you want to go through the line and pull your email back, it hit me, you're not stupid, this is intentional. The pain and suffering is intentional. The forced poverty is intentional. All of this is intentional.
I'm coming to the same realization, and that's something I actually wanted to mention here, was that they need a broken workforce, and they were trying to break me. And they were close to doing it, I swear. Sometimes, like they need it that way. You can't. They don't want a successful workforce. They don't want a happy workforce, because then it doesn't play into their whatever they're doing.
So you know what's interesting? I work with a woman. She works in Raytheon. I think it's down. I won't say what city it is. I don't remember what city it is, but I know it's what state it's in. And you know, part of what we were working through is her being upset. She was passed over for a couple promotions, and they hired 2 young guys. So automatically, the men and the women fight. I see you as the divine masculine, standing up and doing what's right. I really see you with those eyes. I look at the behavior, and then I look at the person. So I see the behavior person. I'm like, this guy's got it. So we're taught, men and women are taught to fight with each other. Women blame men for all their problems. Men don't know what to do with us, sometimes rightly so, because some women are nuts right now. They're reversed. Anyways, she was very upset. 2 young guys got hired for her job, and she assumed it was sexual discrimination. And she was mad because they kept coming to her for answers, and she knew the answers, and she knew the answers, but she got overlooked. And I go in, I read energy. I'm not going to go in and explain it right now, but it'd be interesting to have a session with you sometime. But I go in and I read and I go, that's not why they overlooked you. They want incompetence because it's Raytheon, and they're also connected to the space and the satellites and all that shit. They don't want their people smart enough to know there's something else going on. It has nothing to do with your qualifications. They want stupid people in the role. Well, she looked at me and she said, somebody else told me that. I'm like, there you go. Like, I don't know who told you, but we got to stop assuming that they want the best for everybody. They want control.
Yeah, I just came to that realization in the last year. Because I never realized that. I thought they wanted a great workforce, you know. And I'm like, no,
what were you thinking?
They don't. Right? And I'm like, it's gonna, hopefully, wherever I end up next, it'll make it a little bit easier, hopefully.
Yes.
I can see it up front. Or maybe a smaller organization that's not so huge. Maybe it's these global companies like Nike and Salesforce that are just like, maybe that's the problem.
And maybe you needed to work for those to see what doesn't work. And maybe you're going to start up your own a startup company that you're going to be able to decide the integrity, because we are going to build new communities and not corporate communities, but maybe independent businesses. The entrepreneur is under attack. They don't teach entrepreneurship in universities or colleges. They want employees. They want sheep. So I'm just putting this out here. I'm not saying this is what you're going to do. I don't get to say that, but the possibilities are endless. You've got the skill set and the knowledge. That's the key. Maybe you need to find a few people who say, okay, I don't have that, but I've got the money and I can back you. Where are we going to put your technology? What are we going to do? Are you going to create the anti-contact tracing? You know, we're told up here, one guy went through the border and he went to hand his phone over to this border guard and for him to read the QR code. And he goes, we already scanned you back there. We already know we are.
Wow. Crazy.
So we might need
we got to get away from the tech, because, you know, as a wrestler and a wrestling coach, I know that's where health lies, is in the human connection.
Totally.
And it does. I know it does for me. You know, I need to be out there wrestling people. I really do. Or, you know, not wrestling them, or, you know, touching them and hugging them.
Wrestling them awake mentally.
There you go. Right. Or wrestling the mountain. I like to call it wrestling the mountain.
And this is what's going to happen. At some point, we're going to wrestle. And at some point, we're going to stand back and let it fall. Sometimes if they can't support their own nonsense, stop supporting it, it'll collapse on itself. So there's going to be many tactics and many ways that the old system falls away. Not believing in it is going to be a big one. You coming forward and saying this is phenomenal. Like, I'm so proud of you and grateful, because more people... You're welcome. More people. I love how you just took a compliment. Most people don't know how to say thank you. You do it very well. So, but this is what we want more people to do. Stand in your power. If you need financial advice first, find somebody who's qualified, line up your ducks, get lines of credit organized, change your mortgage, minimize your payments so that you can get through a hump until you get another job. There's things you can do to be proactive before you stand up. So, and for the 200 people that you worked with who are giving you a hard time,
well, they weren't all giving me a hard time. I would say only about half of them were. The other 100 were backing me. And
so I'm going to say, Mark, just for fun, do you guys want to meet my friend Sandy?
Okay, cool. Sure.
Because I'm neutral, but at the
Right.
same time, I understand the role of integrity, morality, decency, being able to look in the mirror in the morning and liking who you see. I'm not going to go and give all your people a hard time or anything like that.
Sure,
right?
sure,
But
sure,
it's,
sure.
I had a client I was working with, and her significant other was out of town for like living in a different town. He didn't believe what she was going through. He goes, "You're crazy." I said, "You tell him, give him my information. You tell him to give me a shout, and we're going to talk about what you're going through. You're not crazy." She goes back and goes, "He doesn't want to meet with you." And I go, "Then tell him to shut up. Quit telling you that, because I can articulate it, and I can articulate how I can articulate it. So he's not helping you by calling you nuts because he can't see what you see." And it was just one of those, she's like, okay. Sometimes all they have to know is somebody's willing to call them on it. Is all they need to know. And then they realize maybe they need to review their stance. Maybe they need to review what people don't mind. This is my latest finding. People don't mind being an asshole or an SOB, but they mind when you can articulate how or why it's happening. Not that you're saying you. No, when somebody says the words that "why waste a good crisis," that's typically a sign of a psychopath. That's how you put it out there. You put out the behavior's the issue, and watch the chips fall as they may. That's how we're going to get through righting wrong behavior. Really, that's my take.
We just got to call them out on it. Yeah. And yeah,
put this video wherever the 200 are. Put this video out there. If people want to be a good person, they should be using you as a role model. And this is not the same as kissing your ass or putting you on a pedestal, because we don't need more heroes or gurus or whatever, but we need people to lead by example, and then off you go on your way, and then you create a vacuum, the next person comes in. Maybe somebody needs to take your letter and say, "Yeah, we do need to address this at your company. If you want to fire me, you want to fire me. But I respect you enough to tell you to your face." That would be a big corporate shift.
Yeah.
Right there.
I think, we've got some strong people in the company, and I see about 100 of them that I can see that are going to say something like they're strong. It's not just me.
That is so good to hear. I'm really glad to hear that.
It was, this group of 200 people really has kept me sane over the last couple months, because for the longest time, I thought I was alone at Salesforce. I really did. And no one else was saying anything. And I was the only one asking tough questions in these all hands meetings. And then I was getting attacked. And then
this is how we got into this mess.
Someone reached out to me. Yeah.
That's how we got into this mess. Nobody says anything.
Right.
Everybody turns a blind eye. They put their head in the sand, or they enable, or they're a bystander, or they are shame-based. They'll put you down so that you feel bad and shut up and do their bidding. And this is all part of a dysfunctional, disordered personality, regardless of where that person lies in that range. But we have to understand it's our silence that got us in this mess, because they know if you speak up, they'll take out a loved one, or they'll cause you a harm. Well, that's only a psychopath or a sociopath that will do that. Like, they got to know, we see your personality traits. We know how you operate.
And we got to learn how to protect ourselves too, because I'll tell you, being a target is not any fun at all. Like, it's not.
We can talk about that after. Maybe we'll end the recording, and then we'll talk for a few minutes, and I can send you some stuff. You do have to protect yourself etherically, because they're sending you thoughts. Some of these people are Satanists. They're going to be sending you rituals or spells or black magic, or they'll be sending you something. If people knew the modems is one of the way the darkness transfers energy, because the modem is electricity. So this is a choiceless distortions. I can show you a whole book on spiritual clearing. Spells, curses, vexes, and modems is how they send dark energy. They knew that. Like, look at Microsoft Windows. Your eyes are the window for the soul. So they're trying to take over, because they can send it through the computer as well, which is another story. We can maybe touch base another day.
Very interesting.
So you know how you're waking up? Now, once you open that process, you're coming closer to the light. Doesn't matter when anybody does it. You, anybody, me, there's no right or wrong. But when you're awake, if you pretend you're stupid, you're part of the problem. But if you're awake and then you realize I've got to do something, it doesn't matter what it is, how big, I got to start, then you're part of the solution. But if they knew how the darkness works, so you know your computer screen, your TV screen, your cell phone screen, those are all scrying mirrors, black magic. It's all done through spelling.
Right, right. Yeah, I've heard people talk about that, and I watched most of your videos too, Sandy. So I've heard you talk about some of that stuff before.
But we have to know how to protect ourselves etherically. So we'll talk maybe later. Like I said, but your mind, I got to go and have a look and just see what your mind, how you're cued in. There's no doubt about that. But there's a certain energy that you need just to cast it out, get out.
Sure. I could use some tips. You know, I have my own ideas on how to protect myself, but sure, I can always use new ideas, and maybe we can share some ideas on that too.
There you go, right? So Mark, how can people find you? I really appreciate what you're saying today and showing the example that we need to see more of in the world. Your timing is impeccable. Look at the truckers that are in Ottawa. Now, we know the government's going to retaliate. They're not going to give up control, although they have no right to control the people. You know, the people in Ottawa are complaining that the people from out of province are ruining their lives. It's like, well, what has the people in Ottawa done to the other provinces all this time? Like they can't handle the double standard, right? Oh, you can make policies that mess with everybody else, but now we're stopping you from having your conveniences, and now you're crying wolf. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just... there's humor in it, but I'm grateful for the people standing up. It doesn't matter how you do it.
Yeah, it's good to see the humor there for sure.
Totally.
So I have a YouTube channel. It's called Bruce Sharkey. And when you see Bruce Sharkey posting on your videos, that's really me, Mark Tracey. Bruce Sharkey is kind of like my professional wrestling name.
Okay.
That's Bruce, and Sharkey is SHARKEY. So Sharkey with an E. Kind of like Tracy has an E. You can find me on LinkedIn, Mark Tracey in Scottsdale. Look for Mark Tracey in Scottsdale on LinkedIn. And my email address is mr.tracey. Tracy is spelled TRACEY, and that's @me.com. So mr.tracey@me.com.
Perfect. So if anyone has questions for Mark, or you want to even give him some words of encouragement and let him know how much you appreciate him laying down the gauntlet and, you know, showing people the way to do this and how to stay aligned with your integrity, I'm sure he'd appreciate the feedback. And who knows, maybe there's other people who would like some tips from him to know how to protect yourself when you're going through making these decisions of standing up, right? So for the people who aren't familiar with my channel, you can email me at sandy@endinggloballoneliness.com. I'm on Facebook as Sandy Glaze. I'm on Telegram as Sandy Glaze Channel. I kind of post a little different in different places just because different audiences like different material, but we definitely are the change we are here to see. We are the change. We are all the change. And it doesn't matter if you start tomorrow, you start next week, or you started last week. We're all a wave. We're all a drop in the wave in the ocean. And it doesn't matter if you're the first drop, you're the middle drop, or the last drop. You need all of them, or you don't have a wave. So we are in this together for those who want to stand up. So thank you for your time.
You bet. Right on, Sandy. Here's to build a new community.
There you go.
All right.
You know, it's funny, pink quartz came down for me today, and I haven't had it out for a while. I've got a lot of quartz, right? But this was the one who came out and said, this is who I'm supposed to hang on to. Right.
That's one of my favorite stones. Yeah.
It is, yeah. For
cool.
Sure.
Makes me feel good.
Unconditional love. Yes, for sure.
Cool.
So, okay, everybody,
all
enjoy
right.
your week, and thank you for watching, and step into your power, folks. The time is now. Have a good one.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.